Hello, this is Movies in Short. Today, I will describe the science fiction and fantasy series called Love, Death and Robots, Ice Age. A young couple relocates to a new apartment. As Rob, the husband, drags a few boxes up to the apartment, Gail, his wife, informs him that the landlord left a strange old refrigerator in the corner. Rob finds it fascinating that, unlike modern freezers, the motor is located above rather than below. Since hot air rises, he comments that it makes no sense to place the motor behind the refrigerator and let the hot air it produces to rise. However, Gail pays little attention and only agrees with what Rob says. She then produces a bottle of wine and asks her husband if he would like to drink. Rob becomes ecstatic and unlocks the ancient refrigerator to retrieve ice. Despite the fact that the freezer is covered in frost, he nevertheless manages to obtain a small cube of ice. A brief toast is then made to the couple's new life together. Rob discovers something within the ice before he could take a taste of his drink. He removes it from the glass and shows it to Gail, asking her to validate its contents. The closer she looks, the more startled she becomes, much like her husband. Gail grabs a magnifying glass to examine the ice cube attentively, desiring confirmation of what she observed. Surprisingly, it contains a small mammoth armed with spears. Gail is curious as to if there are further items in the freezer, so she opens it. She swiftly removes the trash and is surprised by what she discovers. Rob then takes a peek and remarks that there is a lost civilization in their refrigerator. Indeed, the freezer houses a functioning tiny medieval city. The little people continue about their day as usual, unfazed by the two enormous beings hovering close to their metropolis. Rob concurs with Gail's assertion that the current situation is incomprehensible. She clarifies that they are observing a city from the early Middle Ages when woolly mammoths became extinct in the late Neolithic period. Rob shrugs and agrees with his wife in order to conceal his ignorance. Rob buries the frozen mammoth in a container of dirt later on. Gail attempts to lighten the atmosphere by stating that it will likely make an excellent fertilizer. Curiosity prevails, and the two revisit the freezer. To their surprise, everything has dramatically changed. During the Industrial Revolution, a city that was formerly medieval has been modernized. The construction of factories and railroads clouds the sky of the freezer with smoke. The pair remarks that they've only been gone for 10 minutes. But for the small folks, decades have passed. Gail hypothesizes that time moves differently inside the freezer based on this observation. Rob is dismayed that they missed the Renaissance era as they observe the Industrial Revolution unfolding so rapidly. He observes two small guys seated next to a structure under construction and wonders if they are perceived as gods by the locals. However, the guys are mocking them, perceiving them as strange faces in the sky that are peering at the city. One man even adds that he is sick of seeing Gail with broccoli between her teeth. Afterwards, modernized structures are constructed. Rob observes flying objects, which Gail labels as airplanes. Gail feels that the miniature humans have reached the present as more skyscrapers are developed. Rob confirms this when he sees a Starbucks and remarks that the coffee shop is really visible. Suddenly, he discovers something odd, so he investigates further. Suddenly, a missile falls and explodes in the heart of the city. Rob is rendered blind by the explosion, causing him to recoil and tumble to the ground. Rob panics and exclaims that tactical nuclear weapons are bursting in their freezer despite Gail's efforts to calm him down. Nevertheless, Rob's face is as red as a tomato, and Gail could hardly maintain composure. Gail delivers her husband a gleaming toaster as the freezer explodes with enormous nuclear bombs, allowing him to observe how the blast caused his face to flame red. Rob grumbles, but then observes that the situation in the freezer has deteriorated. The pair observes it while hearing screams, gunfire, and explosions. Gail then closes the freezer and states that it is impossible for people to outgrow war in 2 minutes. Rob then inquires as to what they should do, to which Gail replies that they should order pizza. The pair eats pizza for dinner later that evening while they wait for the situation to subside. Rob suggests that they investigate the freezer after 1 hour has elapsed. He hopes the small people had an opportunity to reconstruct their city, but Gail gently advises him to accept the likelihood that they did not survive. Rob nonetheless visits the freezer and opens it. To their surprise, the freezer is illuminated by glowing towns and flying automobiles. Gail asserts that it resembles the Emerald City, albeit with fewer emeralds and more future technology. Rob is happy at seeing this, marveling at how beautiful everything is. Rob laughs that the structure appears to be an adult toy when it suddenly appears in front of them. Suddenly, the future city's center is occupied by a huge pyramid. It consumes power from the bridges it is attached to and emits a brilliant light. It transforms into a diamond-shaped fortress and eats the entire city before exploding into a ball of energy. The majestic energy erupts like a star, and streaks of light begin to whirl around Rob and Gail's kitchen, illuminating their flat. The enchanting light captivates them both. During this time period, it appears that the little humans have mastered time and space travel. The light streaks then return to the freezer, condense into a sphere, and vanish. Rob and Gail's smiles vanish as they become perplexed by what they have just observed. Rob wonders if the small people will ever return, although Gail believes it is quite improbable. Rob dejectedly unplugs the refrigerator as though resigned to the fact that the small people will never return. Knowing that Rob has developed a fondness for the small humans, Gail comforts him with a hug. Then, she seals the freezer and calls it a day. The following morning, Rob prepares their coffee and hands one to Gail. Without speaking to one another, they both ponder the tiny society in their freezer. With a glimmer of hope that the small humans are still alive, they reopen the unplugged freezer to find that cold mist is pouring out. Inside, they observe primitive humans consuming the remains of a giant brachiosaurus during another cold age. It appears that life has resumed in the freezer, and it has now returned to the age of dinosaurs. Then, a roar warns humans of the approaching Tyrannosaurus Rex. The humans flee as one is caught in the dinosaur's jaws. As the T-Rex closes down on the final human, he knocks him over and lunges for the kill. There are numerous suggestions that the freezer is comparable to a pocket universe that illustrates how life evolves to the point of leaving reality. Some may believe that the freezer signifies the end of their world, but it could possibly indicate that the little humans have relocated to another reality. It is unknown how many times this process of life occurred in the old freezer or if it occurs consistently. The previous owners may have regularly witnessed life's rebirth and demise, finally becoming bored with it and abandoning the amazing freezer. The episode titled God, Serengeti by Oat Studios may indicate who created life in the freezer, despite the fact that the show never disclosed who created it. A herd of elephants traverses a field, but the field is actually a table in the center of a strange man's study. The old man is oblivious to this since he is reading a book. His butler, Jeffrey, inquires about the book, to which he responds that it is too technical and that he prefers chaos. Still, he enjoys the book's formula for a black hole. He focuses his attention to the little beings in his pocket universe and laughs at a man who is rubbing two sticks together. The old guy becomes outraged when the Homo sapiens suddenly learns how to produce fire. He laments that he should have said that such people are capable of doing such a thing, but he failed to do so. Jeffrey observes that it has been nearly 200,000 years since they were meant to give them fire. Due to this, the old man asks Jeffrey to extinguish the fire, so the butler blows against the table to generate the wind that extinguishes the flames. Still angry, the elderly man instructs Jeffrey to return them to their caverns. As a result of the butler's compliance, he causes the elephants to stampede towards the people, forcing them to seek shelter. The old man is still irritated by what had occurred, so he intends to diminish the minds of the small beings to prevent them from making independent decisions. A little time later, the humans emerge from the cave to conduct a rain dance. Jeffrey tells him that they have not ended the drought, so the old man instructs him to spray water on the thirsty creatures. Jeffrey complies enthusiastically and sprays water over the table, causing it to rain on the field. As the Homo sapiens exult, he remarks that their god is compassionate. The old guy is amused by their enthusiasm, so he instructs his loyal butler to spray more water. As Jeffrey continues, additional plants begin to appear in the small field. The elderly guy has finally had enough of this amusement and instructs Jeffrey to release the disease. The butler hesitates, while the old man insists on finishing this game. Jeffrey has no choice but to open an old box and remove a valuable bottle from it. Jeffrey sprays this on the Homo sapiens with wrinkled brows, and one by one, they collapse and take their last breaths. Before continuing to read, the elderly man merely observes this from above his book. This creation narrative portrays God as both kind and unforgiving. While he offers water to the thirsty creatures on his table, he swiftly ends their life when he becomes bored of viewing them. Love, demise, and robots. The Ice Age in God Serengeti has its own interpretations of godlike entities. Rob and Gail observe the growth and demise of life without interfering, but with compassion for the civilizations they observe. In contrast, the other portrays a god who is indifferent to the lives before him, viewing them as entertainment that he can just switch off. Subscribe for similar content, enable notifications, and like the video to help the channel. Thank you for watching.